Hey everyone, today we're talking about primer in cans, specifically the types and how to apply them. Primer is a crucial step in many painting projects, especially when working with plastic. It helps the paint adhere properly and prevents it from peeling or chipping. Now, when it comes to plastic, there are a few things you need to consider before you even think about applying primer. First, you need to make sure the plastic is clean and free of any dirt, grease, or oil. You can use a mild detergent and water to clean the surface. Second, you need to roughen up the surface of the plastic. This will help the primer adhere better. You can do this by sanding the plastic with fine grit sandpaper. Once you've cleaned and prepped the plastic, you can start applying the primer. There are two main types of primer in cans: spray primer and brush-on primer. Spray primer is easier to apply and provides a more even coat. However, it can be messy if you're not careful. Brush-on primer is a little more difficult to apply, but it's less messy. You'll need to use long, even strokes to avoid brush marks. When applying primer, make sure to follow the instructions on the can. This will tell you how many coats to apply and how long to let each coat dry. Once the primer is dry, you can start painting your plastic product. And that's it. Remember, primer is an important step in any painting project, especially when working with plastic. By following these tips, you can ensure that your paint job will last. Hey everyone, today we're talking about primer in cans. You know, those handy little cans that you can pick up at any hardware store. Now, primer is essential for any paint job, whether you're working on a car, a piece of furniture, or even just a wall in your house. It helps the paint adhere better, prevents rust, and can even help to cover up imperfections in the surface. But when it comes to primer in cans, there are a few things you need to know to get the best results. First, let's talk about working with aluminum. Aluminum is a tricky surface to paint, as it's very smooth and can be difficult for paint to stick to. That's why it's important to use a primer specifically designed for aluminum. These primers are formulated to create a rougher surface that the paint can grip onto. Now, there are some specialty primer formulations out there that are designed for specific purposes. For example, there are primers that are specifically designed for use on rusty surfaces. These primers contain special ingredients that help to neutralize the rust and prevent it from coming back. Another type of specialty primer is designed for use on wood. These primers help to seal the wood and prevent the paint from soaking into the wood, which can lead to uneven coverage. So, when you're choosing a primer, it's important to consider the surface you're going to be painting and choose a primer that's specifically designed for that surface. Now, let's talk about applying primer in cans. The first step is to make sure the surface is clean and dry. Any dirt, grease, or oil will prevent the primer from adhering properly. Next, you'll want to shake the can of primer for at least 2 minutes. This will help to mix the ingredients and ensure that the primer is evenly distributed. Now, you can start applying the primer. You can use a brush, a roller, or even a spray gun. If you're using a brush, make sure to use long, even strokes. If you're using a roller, make sure to overlap the strokes by about 50%. And if you're using a spray gun, make sure to hold the gun about 6 to 8 inches away from the surface and apply the primer in thin, even coats. Once you've applied the primer, let it dry completely before applying the paint. The drying time will vary depending on the type of primer you're using, so be sure to check the instructions on the can. And that's it. Now you know how to use primer in cans like a pro. Remember to choose the right primer for the job, prepare the surface properly, and apply the primer in thin, even coats.